I think this could be applicable to anyone, right? Like a club rowing program, like, again, whether it's coach led or still student led, a high school rowing program, a high school rowing club, and even a varsity rowing program. I think a lot of varsity rowing programs out there, I already know a few that probably feel a little bit hamstrung by, the power that the university has kind of over them, which, again, is part of the business and being an expensive sport and all these different things that I don't even want to dive into because I can't even speak to that necessarily. But what would your advice be to like kind of like a flourishing alumni organization where, like you said, you kind of have like, and a couple of things that you already mentioned that I think are really fascinating. Like, I think a lot of people, like, in order to have, again, I can't speak, I've never done it before, in order to have like an endowment and have, kind of the ability to fundraise for a $3.5 million, building to then train out of, or even just a boat for people listening, is 40 to 60 grand, just to kind of have a new boat, or coaching pay and all these different things. Like, you got to have these systems in order to probably be able to fund that year after year after year. And then also, one of the things you highlighted was you just had a 30th year anniversary, or sorry, reunion for the class of or the 1995 team. Like, that sounds to me at least like an alumni community builder of
Yeah.
sorts. Like, what would be some of your kind of like pillars for kind of creating or establishing or just helping nurture a alumni organization that can support the needs of a well-functioning club rowing program or any of the other programs that may benefit from that, which I think is probably 100% of them, because that's obviously an important piece, right? We're
Yeah.
graduating people every year. So
Yeah.
take that wherever you want, but this is a really
So,
fascinating topic.
so MRA, the Michigan Rowing Association, the first thing they did was got 501c3 status. And that probably is the critical piece that any alumni body has. Now, my one piece of advice when forming that is do it outside of the university umbrella. Because here's what's going to happen. Some administrator for rec sports, student life, wherever your program's housed, is going to want to spearhead that fundraising. And I'll be honest, I don't trust them. I don't trust them to do the right things that you need to have a competitive rowing program. And the reason is their goal is not to produce a competitive rowing program. Their goal is to keep the university from getting sued and to bring in money. Because the pressure is to have your programs pay for themselves. And club sports is a losing proposition. Like, you're not going to get gate fees. It's not going to, there's not money to be made off of here. And that's an unfortunate reality in the college world, you know. And so if you're outside of the university umbrella, they don't have power over you. They can't steer your funds to where they think it needs. Oh, well, you know what would be great? We need this new court in the rec sport facility, and the rowers could use this sometimes. You know, they're going to divert it to areas of interest they have interest in. And alums want to make sure you have good boats, that you have access to good water, your facility's good, all of those good things. So they don't get to tell you where the money is spent. They have no authority over what you do, right? So you can posture things how you want them, which, because you're alums, you know what the teams need because you remember when you were a kid on the team. That those development persons and administrators, they don't care. I mean, if they cared, they'd be putting a lot of money behind your program. All right. So you take those reins and you keep it outside of the university. Now, that's a lot of work. Like, to file every year. I mean, our MRA treasurer works his butt off, like constantly having to monitor accounts, and certain things are allowed and certain things are not. But the way this is infused in our program, is they keep an account for us outside the university that we can spend money from, right? And while the university doesn't like it, there isn't a whole lot they have to say about it. Members of our team have to be members of the Michigan Rowing Association for insurance purposes. So they effectively have dual memberships. They have Michigan Rowing Association and the University of Michigan men's rowing team, which is under the university umbrella. Okay. And so this allows us to spend money how we want. I mean, we have to follow law, obviously. But that MRA treasurer now has a lot of work because you have to justify all of your expenses to the IRS if you're going to remain a 501c3. So that board works. I mean, it isn't just, okay, yeah, let's get together and have beers at a tailgate sort of thing all the time. Like, to manage a $3.5 million building takes a lot of work. To manage getting the funds around for a boat and maintaining that fleet takes a lot of work. And so those guys really do work hard. My alums do. And, it's pretty harmonious in that sense because we all share the same mission. We all want the team to do well. And that's what really sets it apart. Right. So that's my first bit of advice. Now, the actual inner workings of the MRA, the initial years that I got here, it was still kind of a fledgling, kind of loose, like, okay, let's put out a newsletter every so often and have an event. And I mean, I spent more than uh, several years putting stamps on newsletters and groups of people so we can get the next batch out and get some communication. I mean, it's all done electronically now, but back in the day, it took a lot of work, and it was largely coming from me. And at the time, the women's coach, Mark Rothstein, who's still the coach here, and a few of the alums who are still in town. We met monthly, but over time, this thing's had taken on a life of its own. I mean, every year when you're graduating 10, 14, 16 kids, they start to rack up. I mean, after 10 years, you got 160 some people who are actually pretty like infused, pretty dedicated, right? And then they're bringing it all together now. So what we have is a procedure when they graduate. It's literally at ACRA, like it's literally in your final days on the team. The graduating class, however many there are in it, they elect a representative leader. That representative is now on the MRA board. So every graduating year has a board member. Okay. And that board member's job is to spearhead and keep people informed, keep them coming together for events, raise money, ask them for money. Let's chip in for this, whatever, you know. And then there's a greater elected executive board, your typical officers, vice president, president, secretary, treasurer, some trustees, yada, yada. That kind of like meet monthly and make the decisions. And then we meet with the overall representative a couple times a year. All right. So those elected class reps liaise to the executive board, and that's how it all sort of branches out, and that position can rotate. Maybe one guy's like, yeah, I'm in med school and I just don't have time right now. Okay, I'll take on that role. And so that's how they're sort of immediately brought into the fold, you know. Um, and it's not, while we sometimes there are disagreements, we're all on the same page, and these kids that are, 23 years old who graduated last year, even though they're not like in a position where they can like donate a lot of money yet, the groundwork's being laid, because in 20 years they will be, 30 years they will be. And that's kind of where we're at now with some of the guys who I first coached. And there are some dedicated alums who came before I got here. I got here for like 15 years or so into the team's existence. And the pioneers are very sort of involved. They feel a pride with founding the program. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of how it works. And every year when you can tack on even 5 kids. I mean, 5 kids is better than none, you know. Um, what they used to do, I think they do it sometimes still, is they have what they call the class challenge. Um, the team, the class that raises the most, well, it's a 3-prong point system. You raise the most money, most donations per person who donates, and I don't, most participation. You win the class challenge, you get to name the boat. You get to name the boat that we buy that year, right? So you get some, you know, people are inspired to, okay, let's really go for it this year. Let's really contribute, and that's little competition, intra team competition is good.
What would be? I want to transition to the the team and stuff like that here in a second. But what would be like your quick piece of advice for any program out there that wants to, like, where it's like, well, we haven't really done any alumni outreach, and our program's been around for 15 to 20 years, and we kind of we want to take that next kind of jump in our phase of growth, to hopefully having a little bit more stability long term through alumni organization or through some kind of alumni structure. Like, would it be hosting, an event to kind of get some alums in? Is it sending that weekly newsletter or monthly newsletter? Just whatever you think, like what, for the program directors out there or the coaches out there who don't even have a program director, like, what would that, or even the students who are trying to, again,
Yeah,
establish a structure?
I would say the biggest piece, if you need to have steady communication. I mean, well, if you go years without hearing from, how's the team doing, you know, and so this can be a group effort. You just need somebody to spearhead it, but get people on the team to write articles about how things are going for them. Tell a story. Um, Definitely an annual event, like we do an annual tailgate during a select game that a lot of people come into town for. It's kind of like a rowing homecoming type weekend, and sometimes homecoming itself is that. But uh, nowadays, like, they can come to this new building that we have, and it's kind of like we've made it into a little museum. Pictures and things like that, and they just love hanging out. I think so. Have some in-person events and get some enthusiasm going. But I think it's study communication. You need to have an e-newsletter to go out regularly, every quarter or maybe half year, something like that, um, to let people know, yeah, this is what's going on. You know, we're buying a new boat this year, whatever. Keep them informed. They mostly like to hear from the kids. I mean, they want to hear the experience that the kids are having, and that's gonna, you know, hopefully jar some good memories. And then it's gonna touch the soft spot in their heart that allows them to contribute and give back. Um, so it's communication. I mean, to be honest, that was a strategy early on, and when I was here, and was really sort of the central part of MRA. Is we just kept communication coming, and because for several years they hadn't really heard anything, and especially around this time we had the women's team breaking off to become a varsity sport, and they were wondering how this is all looking. How is this? You lost half the team. Like, how is this going to go? And uh, so they appreciated being kept in the loop, and it doesn't take a whole lot to communicate. I mean, it takes time and effort. You know, it takes almost zero money now. So that's something cheap that you can do to build the sentiment. You know,
Yeah.
but communicate. That's probably the number one thing.